I look down and here's this big male coming up. He's running salmon up against the dams and reaching in and grabbing them. Then he did something that I couldn't figure out for a long time. He'd put them under his arm and squeeze them. And some he would keep, some he'd throw back. I'm Thom Cantrall. I've been chasing Sasquatch now for 67 years. I started in 1958 and been doing fairly steadily for the first several years. Was mostly just reading and learning. I was only 15 years old at the time it started, and of course had to finish high school and then 9 years in the Navy. And believe me, you have very little chance of seeing Sasquatch when you're in 300 feet under the surface of the North Atlantic. But when I left the submarine, Navy gave me my choice of duty stations, and I chose the Polaris Missile Facility at Bangor, and lived up on Indian Island, up on the Peninsula, and there I did have time to start looking and start chasing. But where I really started seeing them was in the early 70s. I got a degree in logging engineering from University of Washington. And although I've never worked a day as an engineer for a company, I have done a ton of consulting work. And mainly in this state, if you building a road and you have to cross a stream used by anadromous fish runs, salmon, steelhead, those that go to sea and come back, and you have to have a permit from the state. Okay, in order to get that permit, you have to do a workup on that. It's called a bridge site survey. So they'd hire me to do that. Of course, they'd use their own engineers to do the ones that were along the road. I got the ones that were 6 or 7 miles back off the road, But I could make more money in a weekend doing that than I could in a month as an employee for the company. So I had my own logging company going, and I operated that, and I just did one of these when I had time, and it worked out really great. But I learned early on, you do not take your measurements, hike out that 6 or 7 miles, sit down at your desk that evening and start to draw it and find out you've missed one measurement and have to hike back in the next day to get it. So what I would do is I would sit down on the bank and in my little writing rain do just a crude drawing. So I made sure I had all the measurements I needed. Well, it was doing this. I'm maybe 5 miles into the forest, and this is old growth forest. There hasn't been anybody there in 400 years. There's no feed under old growth forest, so there are no animals. And if there's no animals, there's no hunters. Okay, so there's been no traffic there forever. And so I'm sitting there on the bank, and they get curious why I'm there. And all of a sudden I'd hear, and first I thought it was a bird that I didn't know what it was. And I found out that's one Sasquatch telling the others, he's over here by me. I got an eye on him, and they're just watching what I was doing. And I'd look up and there'd be an eyeball peeking around a tree, and that's what was my first introduction to him. That's how I met him. And from then on, it's just been skyrocketing from there to, time alone. And that's something a person has to do. If you want to know Sasquatch, you've got to sit and watch him. You've got to do the Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall type of thing. Sit and watch them. And I had that opportunity one time. My buddy and my logging company was shut down for fire season. Fire, how they do it. It's too hot, too dry, they shut you out of the woods. Well, I was shut down for that. He was a forester, and he just took a day off, and we went grouse hunting. Well, grouse hunting was a euphemism for us to be out in the woods with the elk screaming, And that's what we did. We ran onto a herd of elk, about 100 cows with that herd, and we just followed them. You get in there with a cow call and talk to them. You can walk right along with them. So you reach over and touch a cow there, or reach over and touch a cow here. And that's what we did, just walk right along with them until we got them up in a corner, and there's a clear cut there. And they didn't want to cross out in that corner. And about half of them did, and about half of them came back by us, and kind of ticked off the herd bull. He was a big 5-point. I mean, a big 5-point. He was up in the clear cut on a promontory, just screaming his head off and trying to get his cows back together. And this little spike walked up beside him, and he just lowered his horns and sent him rolling down the hill. I says, I think we've pushed these far enough, and turned around and left. Of course, my friend was somewhere else and I was here. It didn't make any difference. We were both foresters. We knew how to get back to where the truck was, So I was walking back and I saw a clear patch ahead of me, and decided, I think I'll get close enough to see what's in it, because I first thought water hole. And of course, you never know what you're going to find around a water hole, right? And so I kind of sneaked in on it, and great big spruce tree, Sitka spruce there, and I kind of peeked around it. Looked like two bears feeding on oyster mushrooms off the down low. But what it wasn't a water hole. It was a place where a little microcosm weather pattern winds had a little patch of blown down timber, about 5 or 6 acres. And it was long enough that it had mushrooms growing on them. And if you've never had the oyster mushrooms, they're delicious. You can just pick them and eat them. They're just really good. And I was kind of envying these two bears out there eating that, but I didn't want to disturb them. So I just sat down there and watched them. The wind was perfect. It was in my face from them to me. And then one of them stood up to look around. I went, no bear. It was a big male Sasquatch. And pretty quick, the other one stood up and looked around. Just watching, and they're feeding along. In about 20 minutes, I got to sit and watch them like that. And that just makes all the difference in the world, And all of a sudden, I felt a little twinge of wind right on the back of my neck. And I was, busted. Because I had 4 eyes that went click right on me, And so I just stood up and stepped away from the tree so they could see who it was. And he stepped back and allowed her to walk in front of me back into the timber. And as she did, she reached out and picked up a baby, put it on her chest, and he just held on, the little fur ball. And they walked back in the timber. And I said, I want to thank you for allowing me to share time with your family today. And he turned around, looked back at me, and to this day, I swear he nodded at me as he turned and left. And so that's my early experiences with Sasquatch, where you actually get to sit and watch what they're doing, and from then on, just it was one thing after another. 1958, a newspaper article appeared in Santa Rosa Press Democrat in Northern California, talking about a sighting in Northern California where a cat skinner had come to work one Monday morning. They were living in camp, which meant they went home on the weekends and then came to work all week and lived in camp all week long. And they were up on Bluff Creek building the roads that Bob Gimlin and Roger were riding 7 or 8 years later, okay? And they came to work, and there was a set of 14, 15-inch tracks around his cat, and then on up the road and around the next cat. And that incident, Jerry Crew, got into the Eureka Times, I think it was, and Andrew Genzoli had written an article that the wire services picked up, and that was the article that showed up in our hometown newspaper. And my dad, Sunday morning, he was always doing this to me. He'd find something interesting in the paper, throw me the paper and say, what do you think about this? And my dad was an interesting person in himself. He was a carpenter, very good carpenter. And he quit school by 9th grade, 10th grade. If you gave him 10 simple arithmetic problems, he'd miss 7 of them, okay? But hand him a set of blueprints for a house and he'll order your lumber and have one stick uncut at the end of it. I don't know how he did it, but he knew the tricks of doing it, And so he knew I was curious. I've always had a great curiosity. So that's what he'd do. He'd throw me in the newspaper. What do you think about this? And that's what he did that morning. He'd read that, had a habit of laying in bed in the morning reading the Sunday paper, and through that said, what do you think about that? And I read it. And at first I didn't really, something will attract, that's, but then the paleontologist, world-renowned paleontologist, Dr. At any rate, names doesn't come to mind right now, my memory, came in and studied it. And he wrote articles for True Magazine and for, I don't know what couple, Argosy. Okay. And you got to remember, we didn't have internet in those days in 1958. We barely had telephones. Okay. I think that was the year we got our first TV. I don't know. We didn't have TV yet. No, we did. 58 we did. And when I started reading Dr. Ivan T. Sanderson, that's who it was, when I started reading his stuff, and then I read what he had done before. I mean, he'd written like 13 books on mammalia of the world that were they were the go-tos for every university in the world at the time. I caught my attention and said, hey, there's something to this. So I started reading then everything I could get my hands on. From then, joined the Navy in 1961 right out of high school. And like I say, as I mentioned earlier, in submarine, a lot of chance to read and a lot of time to read. And that's what I did. I studied and read and learned everything I could about them. Then Patterson Gimlin film happened in 1967. And I had no trouble believing that at the time. And I can give you honest, what do they call it? Reproducible scientific proof of that truth of that film. Now, and it's a little thing called intermembral index, the ratio of arm length to leg length. There's one frame there that's just absolutely irrefutable of her arm and her leg, and it shows an intermembral index of 84. Our intermembral index, our ratio of arm length to leg length, is 72. Now, that's the midpoint on the bell curve. Doesn't mean everybody's exactly 72. I mean, I know people feet that long, that are only 5 feet tall, they look like they're wearing skis, But mine are absolutely perfect, coordinated. I'm 6'4", and my feet are 11 inches, Multiply that by 6.5, and so that's your height, And so that's the way it works out. And that's what got me started. And I read, and then the Navy, when I left the submarine, due to the work that I'd done there from the time that we had just started our final phase of construction when the submarine, the last one, sunk. Can't remember the name of it. And they redid a lot of stuff. We had to install everything new. And I was right in the middle of that whole thing. So when we got done, of course I knew the system. I knew every connection in it from one end to the other. I could operate the missile system. I could operate the fire control system, the missiles themselves. So the Navy was very, very thankful for the work that I'd done. So they offered me my choice of duty stations. And I chose the Polaris Missile Facility on NAD Bangor here in Washington, and they transferred me out here. That got me back in the woods, and that's when it started. That's when I could start getting these experiences. And after I had my doing this work, I just kept seeing more and more and more. And one day, just for example, it was only maybe 8-10 months after that. I'm walking back in to do a job. I come around a root wad, and here's a large male standing there eating huckleberries. And I was 8 feet from him. And I said, well, hi, big guy. How are you today? And he looks at me and does one of those double take things like, where the hops did you come from, and turned and walked away. And it was the reason I was there that day was the water had finally dropped enough, was back in the banks of the rivers and creeks, and where it had been over the land. And so it was muddy everywhere. And where he walked, he left a beautiful set of impressions. What a great chance to compare. And that's what I did. I sat down, took my corks off and my socks, and walked where he walked. So I could measure the depth that I sunk compared to the depth that he sunk. Okay. And I could measure area of the foot. I drew it. And then there's a little device engineers use called a planimeter. You go around the surface of it, of irregular features, and it'll tell you the area that you've enclosed. Okay, so I knew the area of the foot. Then, and how deep he went. I had been buying cattle forever at auction, so I knew I could judge weight really, really well. And I judged his weight and used that and the square inches of foot, and came up with a figure for pounds per square foot that they put on the soil, and compared that with mine. Okay, and that, hey, I just figured out why they sink deeper than we do, and also the stride length. Of course, I documented all of this for later use, and then had to clean my feet off to put my boots back on, but but it was so, you learn so much. I got the idea to use a bin after judging weight. I made a foot of a particular size, particular square inches, and made this bin and steadied it. Then alongside a track like that, would load it with sandbags until I sunk the same depth as the track. Then I'd weigh the weight that I'd put in the bin. Then I zeroed in on my pounds per square foot on the foot. And it's 7.5 pounds per square inch of foot equals the weight. So a 15-inch track, 90 square inches. Okay, 90 square inches, and times 7.5, 625 pounds. There you go. It's that simple. And I've written about it, and intermembrane index. Nobody will talk about that. And that's common. I mean, that's taught in Anatomy 101. That intermembrane index is a fact of life. But nobody will talk about it. But going on from there, we had my next encounter was just a short time after that. I was out, it was late fall and late archery elk season. And I was out there with my bow. That was before the days of compounds. It was a longbow then, recurve. And sitting there in my blind, and had a herd elk come right in front of me, no bulls in it, and had 2 timber wolves come right up the trail. I told DFG about that, and there's no timber wolves on the Olympic Peninsula. I said, don't bet your coffee on that. You're going to be dry if you do. And because they went right in front of me. Then I was just about ready to leave, and I heard splashing, and there was one beaver pond, the bent dam, and another beaver pond, then the dam, and just right on up the creek bottom there. And I heard the splashing. Well, this place was full of salmon, absolutely full of salmon. And if I could remember anything, I could tell you the name of the creek. It's out on the Olympic Peninsula between the Bogoshiel and the Hoh River, and runs into the ocean there. And I sat there and listened, kind of trying to figure out what it was, whether it was salmon just splashing or what, jumping the dams, but it was too much noise for that. Finally, I looked down and here's this big male coming up. He's running the salmon up against the dams and reaching in and grabbing them. Then he did something that I couldn't figure out for a long time. He'd put them under his arm and squeeze them. And some he would keep, some he'd throw back. And the others he'd keep. His thumbnail looked like a knife blade, the way it was trimmed. And he'd just right down the gullet and eat the eggs, ate the heart, and was eating something else. I don't know what it was. Then the rest of the innards he'd just throw away. And the ones he kept, he'd lay over the tree limb. Then I saw his mate there with him. And then there was a youngster, teenage, not even teenage, but youth with him. And he was just playing in the water and fun to watch. And that's what they were doing. They were catching fish, catching salmon. And I watched him probably an hour before I finally realized what he was doing. He would squeeze them. If nothing came out, he threw them away. Those were spawned out. He'd squeeze them if sperm or eggs came out, then they were fresh. He could eat those. That's the intelligence they have. Okay? You have to remember that. They are a very intelligent species. Okay? Talking to my teacher, I think they're more intelligent than we are. The fact they don't want to have anything to do with humans, it's a lot in that frame. But they're worried about things now. But that's after. Let's just stay in the pre-times now. Another incident happened in Alaska. I'd gone up to Prince of Wales Island fishing, and I got tired of catching salmon. You're allowed, six a day there, and that took about 8 minutes to do. And so we were right on a little creek. And when they came in, they were just coming in there fighting over one another, to get to your hook. And so I even have a picture of myself fishing with a bear there. Okay. And then when the tide goes out, all the eagles, there were 14 bald eagles down there fishing. They'd drag them out of the water and eat them. And so just a fantastic place. But I got tired and wanted to do something different. So we had a little geo tracker, if you can imagine me getting into a geo tracker, and took a ride up in the mountains. Saw a bear, so decided to see how close I can get to him, see if I can get in bow range. It's one of the things I like to do. And sneaked in on him, and I got to about within 30 yards of him, and finally just let him go. I figured that was close enough. And I just left them, and there's a female Sasquatch, and she spoke to me. First time I'd ever been spoken to. And what she conveyed was, "You are welcome to come with me." And I did. What it was a funeral. There were 18 male Sasquatch and another group of females that I couldn't count, but they were separate. And it was a funeral for one who had passed on. Funeral and burial ritual. And that was on Prince of Wales, up above, big, my memory again, but big logging community up there. And it's about ghost town when we were there, but it had been several years before. And those are the type of things that set me up for meeting my teacher. It was a marvelous thing, I will tell you that, though. It was marvelous sitting there. By the time I got done, it was dark. Everybody wondered where I was, because I took my gold pen along, and they thought maybe I'd struck it rich. Oh, no. But I struck it rich, but not the way they were thinking about. And all those years, I could never tell anybody about what I was seeing or doing. My family just wanted to make fun of it, so I never told anybody what I was doing. Not anybody. Now I knew, number one, they could communicate with me whenever they wanted to. Number two, they were like we were. They had ritual in their life. And Homo heidelbergensis had no ritual in their lives. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Homo neanderthalis had some, but not much. It was into Homo sapiens before that began. But they have ritual in their life. And that took a long time. And of course, being admonished not to tell what I can tell what I saw. And that was a very large male with lots of markings on his body, stars, crescent moons, lots of markings on his body. So he was an ancient one, and he had passed, and he was revered. And I can tell you how he was buried. He was buried so deep nobody would ever find him, and then covered with rocks the size of this room practically. And then they transplanted trees over that, around that, so you'd never find his grave. You'd never recognize it. So, yeah, I did learn. And yes, that put me right back into delving as deeply as I could and wanting more, wanting to learn more. And that was in 2004. And I was forced to retire a couple of years later. As the doctor. And he says, "You need to retire." I said, "I don't want to retire." I was estimating engineer for an asphalt company. It was a job I just loved. I was in the Tri-Cities in Washington, and I just loved it. $2 million job, bid it out, and then could supervise all the construction on it and everything. I was just enjoying myself. It was a great thing to do, And if it was too dang hot, I went to the library that day. He worked there, in the AC. I was having a ball. He said, "Let me rephrase that." He says, "If you don't retire this month, we'll be burying you next month." He says, "You have heart conditions that need to be tested and taken care of." Now, my heart had been in atrial fibrillation since 2001, still is today. And so, yeah, he got my attention. So I retired and got those tests, got the treatment that I needed, and I'd been doing really great up till just recently. And then in 2010, I was in the Blue Mountains, and I lived in Tri-Cities, and I was just, kind of getting, needed some time out. And I was getting root bound, and so I'm going out the mountains the next weekend, and I'm talking to Arla, and Arla says, "This place where you're going," she says, is there a big stack of wood along that road?" I said, "I don't know. I've never been on this road. It's been closed. It was part of Boise Cascades Tree Farm. They shut it down and deeded it to the Umatilla tribe. And so it's Indian land now. And they've rebuilt the road and just opened it up. It's right up the bottom of the riverbed and right next to the river. I've been on the ridge top on both sides, but never up the bottom. And I was just going in. Well, I see this big pile of wood there next to the road, and there's a large male Sasquatch with a red stripe on his chest, looking for you. And if you look on that bookshelf right over there, you will see a picture of him. And I sat there, and I went out there. I said, "Well, what I'll do, I'll just drive out there and drive up the road until I see one. So if I see something like that, I'll stop there." And I did. I found a big pile of wood there, and it had a big white spot there. Pulled my car in, broke out my standard research kit, which has been in my folding chair, and my ice chest, and it had my standard Diet Pepsi and fried chicken and boiled eggs and my Kindle, set my tail down on my chair, took out a chicken hip and boiled egg. Didn't know chicken hip was thigh. and opened my Kindle, went to reading, and just having a ball, Sat there all day long. 4 cars went by all day long. And about 2 o'clock, I'm sitting there and I hear, I can't come out now. I said, what? I can't come out now. What do you mean? Well, I wanted to converse with you, but I can't come out. There's been too much traffic. I might be seen. And I was, my heavens, I'm fully retired. I didn't have to be here on Saturday. I could have been here on Tuesday just as well, And I'd planned this for between the end of deer season and the opening of elk season, so there wouldn't be anybody there. But I forgot about archery turkey season or something like that. And so that's what we did. I sat there and I says, do you want me to leave now then and come back another day? He said, that would probably be better. And I had these 2 boxes, one of grapes and the other of apples that I'd picked for him. And I says, do you want me to leave the fruit? And he kind of laughed. You've never been laughed at till you've had a Sasquatch laugh at you, especially one that's 9 foot tall. And he says, look at the river. And of course, you could walk across the river on the salmon in it at that time, late September. And, oh, okay. He says, leave them, we will use them, but in the time of snow would be better. So, okay. So I loaded my car back up, put everything away, was just getting in. I had my right foot in the car and was just stepping into it, and he stood up right in front of me. That 9 foot 3 inches tall. I wanted you to see me before I left. And here's this red stripe across his chest. There's a crescent moon and a star tattooed here, and 3 lines tattooed over his nose. Black lines. He says, this is the mark of my status within our tribe. He's an ancient one. He's been converted, been going through the conversion. So he's virtually immortal. Arla's ancient one is 700 years old. Kashima. But he still has a daughter, Taranika. And at that time, she was about 8, 9 years old. And she's about 20 now. And she's a redhead, red body. And I took my artist friend, Alex Evans, out there with me one day. And Alex, as you can see, is quite redheaded. And Taranika was totally excited because here was a human woman with the same color hair she had. And just as a youngster. This was Mind Speak. It was the first time that, had gone on with me. And I really believe they take your own language right out of your own mind. I really do. I think if they were talking to a Chinese person, they would be conversing with him in Chinese. I don't think it matters what language you're using. They can translate it back. Basically, they're just a society, and it's a totally amorphous society. There's no status within it, except for these ancient ones. And all they are is just a go-between between this region and that region. You see, when they go to take a mate, they understand their society is very small. So our clan in British Columbia, when we did our 5-year study on glyphs, the young female there, Rajase, wanted to take a mate. When they do this, it goes to a council. They have a general meeting twice a year. And at those meetings, my teacher would be the representative to go to that and say, we have a young lady here seeking a mate, and who's available for mating. Well, as this one turned out, it was a young male in Arla's area in Oklahoma. Forshna was his name. So she went to his place for a period of time to see if they were compatible and that this is something they both wanted. Then they decided it was, then they come back to her clan to live. Okay? Her father was the clan leader, but that's nothing more than just, who do you ask what we're going to do today? You know, it's not like they need this or they need that in order to, they don't rule, they don't pass laws, they don't, they're so far beyond all of that. First of all, they have respect for one another, and that's one of the first things my teacher taught me, respect. And it's everything in a relationship. It's absolutely everything. If you don't have respect, you have nothing. And if you have that, you don't need other things. They're monogamous and they mate for life. Quite often, if the children are of an age where they're independent or can be, if something happens to one mate, the other one won't even take another mate. If they're young and have children, yeah, they quite often will then. Generally another person, another being that has lost their mate too, and just for help with the children. But other than that, no, they don't, and they're not aggressive. They're not territorial. There's no such thing as territory boundaries for them. They go back and forth in one another area, yes. And another thing is, like the clan in BC, come spring, they follow the game up the mountains. Then, of course, when fall, it's falling back down again. Because you got to go where the food is, That's what it's all about. So part of the clan stayed down at the river level, and the other part went up the mountains. So they're separating all the time. This year, this group will go, next year, the other group will go. It's just, and they're marvelous to watch with one another. It's not this, will you help me? It's how can I help you? And just that little difference makes all the difference in the world and how they are and how life goes. But I didn't work with anybody until 2010. I was totally on my own. I didn't even know other researchers existed in the world. And I guess 2009, because I ran into Arla online one day somehow, and she's been my sister and I'm her brother ever since. And but we had no idea. I had no idea these people even existed. And then in 2010, Toby had a Sasquatch conference down in Eugene. I went to that. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. I had my first book out then, and it had just come out a while before. And it was practically brand new even. And yeah, so then I met people there. Kathy Blunt, great little researcher, funny as a crutch. If she can mess it up, it'll be messed up. She likes to have them around her at night, and she'll sit up at night waiting for them to come around her tent. So she always puts her tent away from the group. And we were in Elk Meadows in California, and she had put her tent across the road and over by itself. And about the third morning, she comes to the campfire, and her eyes looked like two burnt holes in a blanket. she hasn't slept in 3 days. And she sat down. Arla says, "What's wrong, Kathy?" She says, "I can't get any sleep. They won't allow me to sleep." Arla says, "Well, tell them to go away, that you need your sleep tonight and to leave you alone." "I can do that?" "Yes, you can do that." "Okay, you guys, tonight I need my sleep. Go play with Nancy." That was the wrong thing to say. Nancy and her husband were down at the other end of camp. This is a great big area out in Meadows. And they were down at the other end, camp down there. And they were sleeping in hammocks. And that's the night the phrase Sasquatch pinata came into existence. Because what they would do is they would run by and swat them on the butt in their hammocks. That was so funny. It just about killed me. Then the last night we were there, Kathy and I sat at the, well, I don't know, it was the last night, one of the last nights. Kathy and I sat up at the fire after everybody else had gone to bed. It was just down to 3 or 4 of us. And then we had a lady from Australia that had come up, and she and 2 other people had come into camp with us there. And they were still there. And they had gone on to bed. And Kathy and I sat and talked. And we went on to bed. And Kathy says, "Go ahead and go. I'll make sure the fire's down." I was okay. And I did. I went in. Sue and I shared a tent. She always called it my princess mattress, because it was about 15 inches tall. She said that was so I couldn't feel the pee, And also Kathy from England had come over, and she was in the tent too. And Kathy was headed back to her tent, and I was just getting into bed. Tom, come help me. He's big, he's huge. I can't move. She had walked to her tent, and a big Sasquatch stood up right in front of her tent. And she was only 10 feet away from him, and he just froze her right on the spot. And she was half bent over. I said, "What can you see, Kathy?" "A big redwood tree." It's his leg. So I said, "I'll be right there and help you out." So I put my clothes back on. Middle of the night, midnight by now, got over to her, and there she is. She's hunched over. She can't move. She's solid locked. And so I got my arm around her, and I looked right at the edge of the tent. He was standing there under a little Port Orford cedar tree. That there's a batch of Port Orford cedar trees grow in that area around the area there. And so I told her, we got her under control. You can go ahead and release her now. And he did. And it was so funny because she was apologizing to him. He was apologizing to her, and neither one of them were listening to the other one. And just about cracked me up, and the way they were going on. And fine, so I told her, "I'd just grab your cack and throw it in my tent, and you stay there tonight." And yeah, and she did. But and it, that bothered her till just this last spring. We got together and we were talking about it, and I was able to ease her mind about it. And she's one that I've worked with. Oh, she's been so many that I've worked with that had that idea. Look at Barb Shoop's group, and half of those I brought into that group. Penny, Lee, just on and on and on and on. Lee contacted me. She's a writer. She's written books on whales. She's a naturalist writer, one on whales and one on owls. And she wanted to write one on Sasquatch, and she's still working on it. And so I said, "Sure, come on over, we'll talk." And I just, how about we have lunch? And I invited Barb. I introduced Barb to her, and they were just like that, like twins. And of course, Barb, you have a conversation with Barb. She tells you the story, and here's the video that goes with that, She has everything documented, and that's what she's doing the whole time. But yeah, that's how we started. My teacher told me, we have no capability that you did not at one time have. The difference is we continued to adapt to our environment. You adapted your environment to you. We did. We moved indoors. Okay. Now we're face to face across the fireplace talking. We don't have to talk ridge top to ridge top. So we don't need mind speak. Okay. We don't need telepathy. And in the human body, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's what's happened. That's what has happened to many things. Now, they do some things I wonder that we ever had, but that's them, That's them. That's the magic of them. The magic. And believe me, they are. Got to watch twins being born once in BC. Rajase, our little female I was telling you about, and Fortuna, they had twins. Twins are rare. And sitting with 18 male Sasquatch, and her mother was attending her, and watched the birth of this little fur ball about 24, 25 inches long, took him down to the creek, washed him off, and it did the same thing as ours when you hold him up and spot bottom. He let out a wail that you'd get heard for 4 miles, and got him all washed up, cleaned up, and took him over to Father. And then she went back, and I was wondering what she went back to Rajase for. And I watched, and then, I thought maybe they're delivering the afterbirth and delivering the placenta. No, she was working. And finally, the voice came in my mind as twins. So she ended up having one male, one female twins. And I got to sit and watch that. 15th of December, 2015. 15th of January, 2015. And I got to see them in 2023 when I went back up there for Brian's gathering, and she got a hold of me, meet me at such and such a place. So I did. I took 3 of the ladies so they could hike in that area, and I said, I'll just wait for you, which I do now. I drove over there and sat and waited for him to come back, and did no more left than left and gone up the trail. And here come Raj and she said, has another young one, about 7 years. They have their young every 7 years. And they do that to hold the population down. Okay, that's how they hold their population down. And they mate so far apart to keep from interbreeding, keep the genetics strong. Okay, so it shows intelligence. It's just what they are. And, I wish I could open everybody's mind and let them see what I've seen and know what I've known. If you want to get my dander up, mention shooting one. That they're another us. That's actually pretty easy. They're not some type of ape. They're not some type of other breed. I call them Homo hirsutii, hairy man. We're Homo sapien, wise man. They're Homo hirsutii, hairy man. Melba Ketchum has labeled them Homo cognate, human related on mother's side. Because look at their DNA, the mitochondrial DNA that is pure human, is pure human in them, but that comes from your mother's side. That's matrilineal. It follows your matrilineal side all the way back and is human all the way back. The funny thing there is in their hair, we can only get the mitochondrial DNA. We can't get nuclear DNA from it. We have to have flesh. And the nuclear DNA is the one that has the different genomes in it that set them apart. And so somewhere in there, and that's the DNA we learned about in high school when you take the tall pea plant and match it with the pink shrub, and how they come out. And yeah, that's the nuclear DNA, not the mitochondrial. And so that's what they are. They're just another us. And it's necessary to know that, to treat them the way they need to be treated. We don't need to protect them. They protect themselves better than anything in the world. We do anything to protect them, it's just going to hurt them. You set off an area. People are going to be mad because they can't go in that area now. And look at the groups, the Fun for Animals, the PETA, even Sierra Club. They don't want you in that area anyway. So what do they want more than that? And then you've got the hunters that have a perfect right to be there. The hikers, they have a perfect right to be there. Everybody has a right to use it. And our Sasquatch friends know how to avoid these people. If they don't want you to see them, you're not going to see them. It's just that simple. Okay? I've seen them because they wanted me to see them. They've related with me because they want to relate with me, not because of any other reason. And everybody else is the same way. If you want that, take that chair and go sit down like I did with my kit. They'll come to you. And if your mindset's what it should be, that's the ideal. Your mindset's got to be there. The guy that wants to meet one so he can shoot one is not going to see one. It's just not going to happen. And I have 1,000 people that I've talked to. Oh, I would give anything to see one, but I'm afraid. Get rid of the fear. There's nothing to be afraid of. All the fear is within yourself. They can't work through fear. Okay, so get rid of that first. Then take your chair, your fish, your chicken hips, and if you have an unfriendly encounter, most likely you're somewhere near a child. Okay? Any species is going to defend their youngsters to the death. Okay? And so, they want you out. The bad smell you can smell, they control that just like a skunk does. Okay? I've never smelled it in my life. Okay? When I'm next to them, they have a floral smell. Okay? That's controllable. But if they want somebody out of there, I've heard it described, and I know what buzzard puke smells like. That's their first line of defense. You imagine what they eat, what that smells like? Okay? Same type of thing. You're not going to attack that buzzard if he does that. You're not going to get close to him. Same thing here. That's what that's all about. It's a defense. And it'll run people out. Yeah, they'll stem. But you got to remember, it's a greeting. That's hello, how are you? So they sound a little different, and you've got to get used to that. The 25th of September, 2010, and I was told you about Arla and our trip up to find that pile of wood. I set up my station there, and that was the day that he came. It was about 2 p.m, and he said, "I cannot come out. There's been too much traffic. I'm afraid of being seen." So we made, after he stood up, and then he left, and before I left, I went over, and he is headed just a little hawthorn tree there that I named Nathaniel, of course. I went over, and he had just brushed the top of his head with a limb there. So I was able to measure from that limb to the ground and determine that he was 9 foot 3 inches tall. And so I named the tree Nathaniel. So what else are you going to name a hawthorn, right? So I went home, and then I got a message, of Mindspeak. Could you return? Yeah, I can return any time. Today, tomorrow, what's good? He says, if you could come tomorrow, that would be wonderful. I said, okay, I'll be there. And I drove back out. It's about a 70-minute drive, but it's a gorgeous drive out through the wheat fields and go to Blue Mountains this year. Was right. They hadn't really started harvesting yet, and those wheat fields were so beautiful. I just loved it. At any rate, I drove out there, and he met me. The gate was shut that day, but he met me right at the gate, and we stood and talked face to face for about 2 hours. And that's where the things I've been telling you about what he told me, what he taught me, how to start, that all came from that conversation. And since then, his healing has been magnificent, marvelous. The things they've done for me is out of this world. He's saved my life many times. I don't even know how many anymore. My heart would be going to stop. All of a sudden, I could feel him being manipulated, and it'd be back running again. And like I say, I don't have doctors anymore because they can't understand why this keeps happening, and they won't accept my explanation for it. So I talked to him, and he said, I'll take care of you as much as needs to be. He says, it's going to come a time when I can't do more. I said, yeah, I'm old. I'm 82 years old. I turned 82 on the 1st of July. So I understand that. And it wasn't an easy 82 years. It's being a lawyer, you don't treat your body well. And, I've got more aches and cracks than most people are allowed. That's then the dumb stuff I've done. We won't even get there. But but that's how I met him, and that's how we started. From then to this day, well, he just told me not to mention the talking about the funeral. He's always with me. And now Taranika says she wants to come visit me now too. She'll know because you'll hear me giggle. I thought that was, she told Arla that. Yeah. So yeah, we've got a great community here. Barb, the things she's learning are right on. And they're getting closer and closer and closer. Saved her house from a tree falling on it, and she just has a ball doing working with them. The light glow. Get her to tell you that story. It's fantastic. The eye glow, Then you get into Barb's group, Lee, Penny, just on and on and on and on. And now I just have to sit at the campfire and grin, Let them ask the questions, And I give a lesson every now and again. Did yesterday after Barb was done, and Wayne had a little thing to say about he got a curing in the mountains this year. He was in a terrible accident here just a 3 years ago, and he crippled, walked limp badly, 1 foot, not like that. Went through a healing up in Blue Mountains. Couldn't even tell you about it. Went through a healing. He walks as straight as can be now. And that just happened last month. I was up there, came home one Tuesday or Wednesday, and he went back up. And it happened after that. Yeah, so fantastic things that can happen. But you got to have your mindset right. It's all about that. It's all about respect. We don't respect ourselves. He told me, he says, I don't understand humans. You have no respect for each other. You have no respect for where you live. And worst of all, you don't even have respect for yourselves. And he's right. People do the strangest things to themselves.